Gentlemen, welcome back to the shop today. Treat especial new tool day. Now, just my luck. But most guys say you make your own luck. Some guys, if they didn't have bad luck, they had none at all. I had that Eco blow jobber and the batteria fried, so I went out quick, fast, in a hurry, bought this littler guy. Time! This ought to be interesting, because what we see on Makita, remember with that bikini ladies trimmer, we saw from the prosumer grade skookumness, relative skookumness of these tools, to the home gamer side of things, there is a marked decline in both the materials and the thoughtfulness what went into the design. Here we see this guy feels quite light, just a small little motorb on there. We got the same kind of speed controller. 1, 2, 3 is in the Better 3 cartridge fish bonker she keeps beside her bed. You ladies in the crowd will recognize that as speed number 3. I have various and sundry accoutrements getting away from the dolly. Hard to get good help now. Sorry about that. We have both a bag and some sort of Polynesian, maybe, Papua New Guinean ceremonial cod piece. This looks like she'll go from suck to blow. If you swap this around, you see this, I think, well, this is centrifugal, right? So that would blast air out there. But if and you wanted to, you could do a little Uncle Donnie reverse action here. Come at her from the backside, and then you could suck shit up and stick her in the bag. Huh? Whoever the cleverness of the countenance, you could tell this was mainly designed as a blower, not a goer, on account of that Flatlander, what's got the distinctly Latin name, old Bernoulli, not Johannes the father, but the other fella, David. Daniel Bernoulli. Of course, when you constrict the flow of a gas, the pressure has to drop. That's how carbonators work. It uses that to suck fuel and aerate it into the stream in an internal combustion engine. But in this case, what they're doing is allowing it to speed up the flow. The pressure drops, the flow has to speed up, and then out the tail end here, you get faster flow than just out of the end right here. So because you don't want the obverse of that when you're suctioning, this is sort of the wrong shape for suctioning, but it probably does make never mind at all. Daniel Bernoulli, of course, 17th century scientician, got from a long line of mathematicians. He had a rough go of it on account, well, that his name, Bernoulli, right? Is Italian or Castilian, Spanish, but he was a flatlander, meaning he was from the Netherlands or the area around, what's that other one? Belgium. Real dark weather, on the polder and stuff. Real dour, miserable kind of people come from that. No, I'm kidding. But the thing is, his father, of course, they would have been not Catholic. They would have been Protestant, 1700s. All that flatland was run by the Spaniards, Spanish Inquisition, all that stuff. So it says in all the books that Bernoulli was Swiss, but in fact, he was a transplanted flatlander. Of course, your father, as I said, you make your own luck. Some guys, if they didn't have bad luck, they wouldn't have any luck at all. But he got into it with his father. And that's one of the interesting things about that whole family, is that you can't be a man until your father is dead, either figuratively or in reality, in the ground. However, his father took him to task on stealing some of his ideas and got very jealous of his very smart young son, Johannes did, of his son, Daniel Bernoulli, who we know as famously, also had lots of uncles that did calculus, pre-calculus, very powerful tools. There's some smart motherfuckers there, but that's part and parcel of having a fucked up family. Hey, like the father being jealous of the son, actually stole a bunch of the son's ideas. the name of the son's book was Hydraulic Dynamica. Anyway, the father stole all the ideas, made his own book named Hydraulica, and then predated it before his son. So it made it look, he took credit for all his son's accomplishments. Real sick. And I don't think they ever got back together over that, but that's neither here nor there. Just to say that you hear all these historic figures and you study them in Universitad, but they were just people. Bumblefucks, right like the rest of us. Heartening to know, I find. Just weak, petty, measly humans. We got the clamshell apart. Polycarbonate, high quality. This is expensive material, but glass fiber reinforced 15%. Normally we'd see 30, but it is polycarbonate. So real tough, impact resistant material. On the inside of the clamshell, an interesting countenance. We have some texturized outlets here. Now, whether that would be for extending a no-slip condition, that is having a layer of air not moving in there, because you, instead of making it super smooth, you actually make it really rough. And then I don't know if that would aid anything, or if that is an artifact of the mold making process or manufacturing, just so that it doesn't prematurely wear the mold, or if it does, you can't see it. See some injection pins. This is odd as well. We see injection pins with that same texturizing. So I am not in the mold making industry, but I would assume someone in that industry could look at that and tell me exactly why they've done that. I assume it's not for extra qualitad, but for some sort of manufacturing shortcut or extend the life of the molds. Another artifact of the different class of tool, I would say, and also the material, is the fact that this anti-tamper or this anti-theft horrific teal countenance itself is a different tone. You see, they haven't bothered to match that tone. And on the inside, if you look at that impeller, that color is completely different than either the two of these. This harkens back to a simpler time when Makita cordless drills were the only ones on the market. Remember that color. It's completely different than what they're selling now. We see some mitigation for static electricity, ultrasonically welded in place to conductive tabs, and horribly ultrasonically welded on account of they're not actually making positive contact. They're just kind of weeble wobbling around now. I assume when we're talking about tens of thousands of volts, that ain't going to make no never mind. But at the same time, if you are going to take the time to ultrasonically weld it, you might as well do it right. And here's a throwback to a simpler read dumber time. Why is there a split lock washer on there? Because we've always done it that way. Split lock washers ain't good for fuck all, but increasing the bomb count. And here we see the impeller itself is a nylon rather than polycarbonate, and glass fiber reinforced 30%. I trust I didn't build you up too much, but we're already where the rubber meets the load. We got an elastometric bush in here just to keep the vibrations down. Mabuchi motor, no doubt. The flux ring attached. There we go. Yeah, Mabuchi, made in China. RS775VC. That is probably a proprietary number, catalog number, just for Makita. Oh, it's raining outside. I thought I heard a bunch of rats in here after my potato leavings. So I'll go and look that up. It looks reasonably skookum. Big Jesus wire in there. And nicely affixed as well. Silver on the stakes as well. We have some what you call it like you never smelled before. You know the stuff. Just to keep that tab in, and really wants to stay on there good. The back bushing looks like a bushing and not a bearing, which is surprising. It looks like a big fat oil light bushing in the back, and on the front end, same thing. And then they've gone and machined. Yeah, no, that looks like metal injection molded and then milled 2 flats in order to hit the double D-ring on the inside of the impeller. Not much to her. Let me look up that motor. You believe that? 300 watts out of the Jesus thing. No load, something like 1.8 amps. And full load, no, 2 amps. Very minor amperage under no load. However, because the Spinema thing's at 20,000 RPMs and it's got a fan, it's pushing lots and lots of fluid. So the only way we would get no load is if we close off the inlet port and you're pulling a bit of a vacuum. You're not actually moving any fluid, any air, and you'll hear the RPMs go up. That's why, you know, your shop vac, why the RPM of the motor increase when you block the inlet. It's counterintuitive, but when you block the inlet, you're actually pumping no air. So there's much less load on the motor, and the RPM pumps up. This thing at stall, now stall, it's not putting out any wattage. It's just a heater. This thing, 130 amps it'll draw at stall. So not long for this life if you ever stalled this thing out. Now we're at where the 200-pound gorilla meets the tool. This is the part what always breaks, the trigger switch. Another clue that this is a home gamer tool and not a prosumer tool is that there is no speed controller. There's no kind of brain boxery in here. And it appears as though this is not just a ka-chunk switch. It's actually speed controlled because there is a copper heat sink mounted in here. That would entail that there is some sort of, here's a passive device, but like a MOSFET in there, an H-bridge, actually doing some switching, what would require some heat sinking in here. We have a nice big snubber diode as well for when we open up the circuit and everything is still turning. All those angry pixies just flowing through that wire. You stop them dead. Of course, you get the water hammer effect. And what that allows you to do is freewheel that current instead of getting a huge voltage spike and ruining stuff. That current can freewheel back through that diode. I haven't decided if this is the chintziest fucking thing ever or the most brilliant speed control mechanism in existence in the history of the world. It's so fucking simple. It's beautiful. So recall, we had the speed control in the trigger, right? And if you look back in the video, the actual speed controller here, it's not on a switch. It's just a rolling wheel with a detent. So how the fuck does, since there's no exchange of pixies here, is it mental telepathy or what? How are they controlling the speed? It is a physical limiter, stroke limiter for the trigger. We put her in 1, she goes but there. We put her in 3, she goes all the way to the basal plate and bottoms right out. So you see what they're doing is that you can control the speed. You leave it in 3, you can control the speed with your finger yourself. Or you can limit it, not have to think about it, and just pull for all she's worth, and you only get but the 1 speed because you're knocked up against that physical stop. Tester out, wir müssen, but we, bit of a problem. All the Makita batteries are over yonder at the EOD Mark II. So I got the rain out there. I tied you over. 'Twas once a man from Rangoon who dreamt of farting his way to the moon. Seems he flopped as a rocket. He shit in his pocket and died in a noxious typhoon. You hear? Cats and dogs out there. Through the magic of television, we got the batteria. Oh, phone's going off there. We got a alternate dimension. Wing! It works. I didn't write that little ditty mind about Rangoon. It was a kind mass stranger. Christ, that's a tall robot. Chris Talbot wrote that. Thank you very much, Chris. That was a funny one. I enjoyed that one. Also, speaking of which, we're gonna test this out. Yeah, I didn't stink she'd fart and let the smoke out. We didn't do too much to her, so it actually sounds kind of mean. Like, give a proper blowjob. Captain Hindgrinder joke. Arr, Billy, you ever have a parrot on your shoulder? No, Captain Hindgrinder, but I've had a cockatoo in my mouth. Well, that's one. Holy old fuck! You got some proper chooch. This thing works surprisingly well. It spreads metal chips far more efficiently than I can do by hand. We've got the bottom size top wise. We're going to use it as a vacuum. It feels a little awkward, but... Oh, I see. It collapses the dingus. We need a more rigidified dingus in order to actually get this working. I like that adjustable trigger. This is a weird setup here, but it actually works better than when you get a clog and you got to go through 16 feet of hose and beat the clog out of her. I normally get my doctor to do that for me, but in this case, it gets clogged generally at the tippy top. Of course, it'll get clogged in here as well because there's some grading, but it tends to get clogged at the tip, and you just give her a little squeeze and it unclogs. So that's actually bloody brilliant. This thing is going to come in super handy. I kind of bought it on a lark, but she blows good and she sucks even better. Son of a diddling thing. Who knew? Thanks for watching. Keep your dick in a vice.